Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, net neutrality was taken down. Net neutrality was the rule during the Obama era that prevented ISPs, internet service providers like Verizon, Comcast, and AT&T from essentially screwing around with the network, slowing it up, speeding it up for certain vendors, slowing it up for others. I don't like this particular content because this content is critical because I'm going to slow this down. I am making a deal with this particular group, and so I'm going to speed them up. You're going to have to pay me more if you want to get involved in this particular process, or other people are not going to get to your site. That type of stuff. Monkeying around with the internet. Now, mind you, this ruling was put into place because people were doing it, meaning the companies were doing it at one point. The ruling was put in place for a reason. It wasn't this kind of just abstract thing that somebody was like, let's just put in net neutrality just for shits and giggles. It was done for a reason. IG Pie, the guy who Obama put in, who was against net neutrality, that Trump put in as head of the FCC, meaning Obama put him on the FCC board, Trump put him as head of the FCC, killed net neutrality, eagerly got rid of net neutrality, against the will of the overwhelming majority of the American population, a significant majority of the American population. Nothing was wrong with it, so why are you dicking with it? Where was this public screaming to get rid of net neutrality? I'm unaware of the public doing that. I'm unaware of the masses coming together saying, you know what? We need to get rid of net neutrality. We need to have an internet that's going to be ruled by the internet service providers. That's what we need in our life. I don't remember that being there. I don't remember that being part of the process. In him getting rid of this against the overwhelming majority of the American populace, Congress has veto power over what the FCC has done. Meaning Congress has authority within the first 60 days to overturn the ruling that Pie did in the face of massive opposition of everyone else. The question becomes, will Congress do it? Now, this is Common Dreams. Here are the 19 Senate Democrats still not committed to defending net neutrality. Now, do you remember, let's see, this?
I want to ask you, President Trump told CPAC on Friday that the Republican Party from now on will be the party of the American worker. And in November, President Trump carried white voters without a college degree, working class voters, by a staggering 37 percentage points. What is your plan to win these voters back into the Democratic fold?
We lead with our values and we lead with our actions. We talk to them about how literally hours into the Trump administration, he was a fraud. He made it harder for first-time home buyers to buy a home. Hours into his administration. Days later, he made it harder to save for retirement. He nominates a judge for the Supreme Court who wants to eviscerate collective bargaining. When we lead with our values as Democrats and talk about what we've done to make sure we're protecting Social Security, protecting Medicare, growing good jobs in this economy, if you want good jobs, elect a Democrat. That's the message that we have to communicate. It's a message that is true. It resonates in every zip code, and that's what we're going to be doing all over this nation, leading with our values, leading with the facts. And the facts are Democrats grow the middle class. Democrats protect economic security. And we need to do a better job of communicating that message.
He asks Tom Perez, Donald Trump was able to essentially eat your lunch. White working class voters. Now, the middle class used to belong to Democrats. That was the Democrats' thing, the working man's, the unions, those type of things. And he's making a point that Donald Trump had a staggering amount of white working class voters. He ate your lunch. A blue-collar billionaire ate your lunch. He slept with your wife. You essentially was being cuckolded, and you stood by and watched. Completely ineffective, not able to do anything about it. He asked you, how are you going to get those people back? What do you represent? And your answer was, we lead with our values. And after saying we lead with our values, you turn around and just attack Donald Trump. This is after a campaign where the overwhelming majority of Hillary Clinton's ads, the overwhelming majority, had to do with attacking Donald Trump. The entire Democratic plan was to attack Donald Trump. And Tom Perez, after becoming the head of the Democratic National Committee, he still is on the same thing. We lead with our values. When they asked Donna Brazile on Trevor Noah the same question, what do you represent? She said, well, we elected Tom Perez. As if what Tom Perez is somehow an answer to what you represent. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I've heard Tom Perez scream about his values all the time, and I continuously say nobody knows what those values are. This is just this kind of secret between Tom Perez and I guess this inside secret between Tom Perez and the Democrats. Making this argument that Democrats grow jobs and everything else, clearly the public did not believe you. You gave 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. That is a damning stat. That is embarrassing. If you're going to be the Democratic Party and you're going to represent the middle class and everything else, and you give 95% of the wealth to the top 1%, you expand income inequality to levels of like pharaohs. And you're having this conversation about growing jobs and all this other stuff. Republicans could say the exact same thing. Republicans, Paul Ryan, could get out and say, look, we're going to kill Medicare in order to save Medicare. We're going to destroy Social Security in order to save Social Security. People can say whatever they want. What I'm stuck with is when you tell me about your values is to compare it with the things that you actually do. That's what I'm stuck with. So when I hear values, and I see, here are the 19 Democrats still not committed to defending net neutrality. You have an overwhelming majority of the population that says, leave it alone. Don't touch it. There's nothing wrong with it. Don't touch it. And you touched it anyway. Then you get the Democratic Party, who's supposed to be the people who are out there fighting for the working man. And even though you have an overwhelming majority of the population saying don't touch it, you still have 19 Democrats leading with their values, not supporting net neutrality. Leading with their values. Now that the FCC has finally made public all 539 pages of IG Pie's order to repeal net neutrality, defenders of the open internet are warning that the time has come for members of Congress to make a choice. Either side with the American public and take action to stop Pie's attack on net neutrality, or be voted out of office. This is too fucking late. Really? Like, this is your demarcation point. This is your line in the sand. It wasn't the drone strikes. It wasn't giving all the money to the top 1%. It wasn't doing that shitty Obamacare as opposed to actually having Medicare for all. This thing is falling apart, leaving millions of people off the healthcare rolls. None of those things were lines in the sand. When they passed the National Defense Authorization Act, saying that they could put troops on American soil in response to Occupy Wall Street, meaning when people rose up saying, we do not like this, we need to have a different way of going about things, the Democratic president, leading with his values, worked with the FBI and these other organizations to infiltrate and suppress this uprising, leading with their values. Well, are they going to ignore the overwhelming public opinion during a tight election year and rubber stamp the 500 pages of a blatant, stinking corruption? Yvonne Greer, campaign director of Fight for the Future, said in a statement on Thursday. Or will they listen to their constituents, small businesses, free speech advocates, and tech experts and support a Congressional Review Act? Vote to overturn the FCC's repeal and restore net neutrality protections that keep the web free from censorship, throttling, and fees. The thing is, when Google, Facebook, and Twitter, they have their political allegiances. Many of those are in the pockets of, or essentially work in tandem with Democrats. When information that was coming up that was disadvantageous to Clinton, that information was shadow banned. They were hiding certain information that people were looking for and wanted to see was being hidden by the Google algorithm or being the Twitter algorithm or the Facebook algorithm. They were monkeying with the results. They were changing around the reality that people were seeing. because they had a political axe to grind. They had something that they themselves wanted to hide and obfuscate in order in favor of the candidate that they themselves chose and wanted. Do you believe that internet service providers would do the same thing? And the answer is, of course they would. If they had something that was disadvantageous to them, yeah, they would. I have no doubt that they would throttle that, make that slower. If they had something where they can make an extra buck off of it by slowing somebody else down and speeding somebody else up or charging somebody else more, would they do it? And the answer is yes. They're capitalistic enterprises. Their goal is to maximize their profit. They would not have been supporting this legislation. Understand, those companies would not have been supporting this if they weren't going to use it. What is the point in supporting something if you're not necessarily going to do anything with it? You had this 0.001% that's going to profit from this. And ultimately, the edifice, the thing in government, decided that that 0.0001% was more important than the overwhelming majority of the population. Even if there was people stupid enough to believe that this was a good idea, those people represented a tiny, tiny fraction of the overwhelming majority of the American population that says, leave it the fuck alone. It should tell you something about your government, the corruption that's ensconced in your government. I continuously make this point. You do not have a functioning government if you have corruption in your government. There is no government that works, that's corruption-free, that's even moderately corrupt, that would have done this. It was blunt, it was over the top, and it was directly in the face of what the public wanted, and he gave two shits about it. Let's look at the people who are against it. Here's some Democrats leading with their values. Leading with their values, like Tom Perez says. Cory Booker, not surprised at all. Tom Carper, Bob Casey, Chris Coons, the most racist name in Congress. Catherine Cortez Masto, Joe Donnelly, not surprised. Dianne Feinstein, not surprised. Heidi Heitkamp, not surprised. Doug Jones, damn sure not surprised. Joe Manchin, extraordinarily unsurprised. Claire McCaskill, completely unsurprised. Bob Mendez, Chris Murphy, Patty Murray, Bill Nelson, absolutely not surprised. Tina Smith, John Tester, certainly not surprised. Tom Udall, and the embarrassment of my state, Mark Warner. Leading with their values. They're leading with their values. Now, there's been a slight update to this. So, Senate will force a vote over overturning net neutrality repeal. One of the Democrats changed their vote, and it was Senator Claire McCaskill. Senator Ed Murray has mustered the 30 votes necessary to force a vote on the FCC's decision to repeal net neutrality. Senator Claire McCaskill announced that she signed on to Marley's request to overturn the new rules under the Congressional Review Act, which lets Congress nullify recently passed regulations with a simple majority. Markey announced his intention, to file a resolution of disapproval in December, just after the FCC voted on the new rules that killed net neutrality protections from 2015. These new rules were officially published last week, and with 30 sponsors, Markey can make the Senate vote on whether to consider overturning them. If this happens, it would lead to a debate and a final vote. That's not remotely the end of the process. If it is approved, the resolution will go to the House, and if it passes there, the desk of Donald Trump, who seems unlikely to approve it. And if it fails, it's not the only option on the table. We've already heard about legal challenges, the local legislation as well, but it keeps the fight for net neutrality running and offers an immediate alternative to the open internet bill that doesn't restore the old protections. The protections should go further. They should go further. I mean, at this point, we use the internet in the same way that we use electricity. We should use this as a national appliance, and it should be, for the most part, national. The United States government should make this available to each and every person. It should not be in the hands of these internet service providers. It should be in the hands of the public. We funded it. We built it. They should not have it. I'm sick of the United States government investing in these things and then handing these things over to corporate interests. if we invest it, if we build it, if we are putting our tax dollars into it, we should have a say and we should have a hand in it. And some of the profits and resources that come from anything that we as a government is invested in or put our hands into should go back to the rest of the population. They're leading with their values. Senator Claire McCaskill, good job. I suspect Senator Claire McCaskill is terrified that she's going to lose her seat, in which case the last thing that she wants is this on her record when she's been out there begging progressives to vote for her. Point is, though, any Democrat that doesn't vote for this, and for that matter, any Republican that doesn't vote for this, it should give you a clear understanding of who they represent. There are other litmus tests. There are many others. But in this very specific case, you have a clear demarcation point. You have a clear line in the sand where the overwhelming majority of the American public is standing on one side of that line. Who are the traitors? Who are the sellouts? Who are the people that are so obsequious to cash in either of the parties that is going to be willing to say, fuck the public. Fuck the public. You have 30 Democrats who are on board saying, okay, we're on board for this. We're going to push this. Who are the ones who aren't? I will be eagerly waiting to see who makes their vote and how they make their vote. And I think there should have been far more other litmus tests as opposed to just this one specific issue. But I am completely in agreement that you should vote their ass out of office if they're not going to represent your issue, your interests. This being one of them. This being one of them. When I use the term litmus test, I don't use the term in the sense of just one, multiple things. I have a series of items that are required for me to for anybody to get my vote. But in this specific case, I know not everyone has my. I know not everyone is to the left, to the way that I'm to the left. So fair enough. Fair enough. When I'm saying this litmus test, I'm also talking about Democrats. Just hillbots. And I shouldn't say hillbots because I'm trying to be conciliatory. But people who vote Democrat, who think voting Democrat is perfectly fine, who thinks voting Democrat in every situation is the way that they go about it, I am saying that at some point, you need to represent, you need to understand that these guys are not in your interests. Do you honestly believe that Cory Booker, the chubby superhero, if he's not on board for protecting net neutrality, that he's somehow in your interest? How can you say Cory Booker is in the interest of the American public when Cory Booker is not even signed on to supporting net neutrality, something that the overwhelming majority of the American public supports? Come on. It's like, come on. They're leading with their values, right, Tom? They're leading with their goddamn values. So they're still fighting. Let's see what takes place. But whether you're Democrat or Republican, if they don't vote for this, you should vote their ass out of office. Full stop. There are very few issues where you have just an overwhelming majority, a clear majority, saying, don't touch it. It's not broke. Stop dicking around with things that aren't broke. And the only reason that you would touch it is because you have some kind of financial interest that you believe you're going to benefit somehow off of being touched. Maybe not necessarily in your capacity of the FCC, but definitely when you get out the FCC and you're going to be looking for a job. So, let's see their values. I don't need Tom Perez to tell me his values. I see your values by the votes and the things that you do. What's going to be the vote? What's going to be the things that they do with regards to net neutrality? I will leave it at that. This ran a bit longer than I wanted, and I'm not sure why this ran longer than I wanted, but I hope I made my point. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks guys.